green eggs and ham. I do not like them, Sam I am. I do not like green eggs and ham. How about you, boys and girls? Do you like green eggs and ham?
No.
Perhaps the Horton, or the Lorax, or the Grinch Who Stole Christmas, or perhaps the Cat in the Hat. I'm here today to tell you that I learned great lessons from reading about Dr. Seuss, and I also think that those lessons pertain to us as Toastmasters. There are lessons that can last a lifetime. He was a wonderful storyteller, composed over 60 books, and he talked about a lot of ideals and ideas, including 1957 when he wrote this book, The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. It was about commercialization. And just a little excerpt from that would be, and the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so? It came without ribbons, it came without tags, it came without packages, boxes, or bags. And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. And now, I love so many of Dr. Seuss's books, but Green Eggs and Ham, I must confess, when I was reading to my son Brian, I would deliberately skip parts of the book. Maybe it's because I always like scrambled eggs, and ham, I always like bacon. And now that I have my Fitbit exercise tracker, it's low-fat sodium bacon that I enjoy. And he would say to me, Dad, you skipped parts. But you know what? There are lessons that we can learn from Dr. Seuss because he was such a tremendous storyteller. And he talked about lessons like gratitude and the wonders of the universe in so many of his books. And the reason that I got all this excitement about Dr. Seuss was mentioned in the introduction. March 2nd would have been his 112th birthday. It's also the day called Reading Across America. The National Education Association chose his birthday in 1997 to say that it's so fundamentally important for kids to know how to read, to hopefully have parents who know how to read to them. And that's why for the last 3 years I have enjoyed tremendously being part of the United Way of the Suncoast Reading Pals program, reading to Brian and to Lewis, my 2 proteges, who are now in the 3rd grade. And The Lorax was the book that I read about. It's about the environment. I am the Lorax. I speak for the trees. I speak for the trees have no tongues. And if you forget some of your stories, and I know that Jessica doesn't, she knows that story, it was the Wunceler who taught people about the truffula trees and the fact that, sure, we can chop down 1 or 2, but if we chop down a whole forest, then we're not going to have an environment that's worth saving. And it's really so important, for not just for kids, but for people in general, to know that unless someone like you cares an awful lot, nothing's going to get better. It's not. He was born in Springfield, Massachusetts, and he taught us about perseverance. He taught to us about the courage to be yourself. And I think that Toastmasters is a gift, just like his books were a gift. And that's why I've enjoyed so much recently doing demonstration meetings, trying to kick off Toastmasters to corporations that maybe have just heard about it. And I think maybe 5 or 6 lessons that we can learn from Dr. Seuss's life. And by the way, it's Theodore without an E, Seuss Geisel. He's actually named, his middle name is his mother's maiden name. And if it was pronounced correctly in the German, it should be Seuss, as in voice. But it's Seuss. So it's Dr. Seuss that we care so much about and the lessons that we learn from his tremendous rhyming. When he was 14 years old, World War I, a German family, not too popular in the United States, they were selling war bonds in the Boy Scout troop in Springfield, Massachusetts. He was very fortunate because his grandfather owned a brewery. Not too good after the Prohibition came, but at that time a thriving business. And his grandfather bought some of the war bonds, and so he was actually the 10th Boy Scout, of 10 Boy Scouts that were going to receive an award from former President Teddy Roosevelt. Unfortunately, they only had 9 awards. Somehow they got screwed up and the 10th one wasn't there. And there he was standing on the stage, and Teddy Roosevelt looked at him and said, "Who's this little kid?" And ever since that day, he was fearful of getting in front of groups and speaking because of that one experience as a 14-year-old boy. So I think that the story that I learned from Dr. Seuss about confidence is somebody's giving an icebreaker speech, and sure, they had like 10 things that you could constructively give them as feedback, but we don't want to scare them away. We don't want them to leave out the door and never come back and to be as fearful as Dr. Seuss was. So that's confidence that I think is very important. He also was a madman. He was involved with a thing called Flit, which was a bug spray. And when he got enveloped in working for a Standard Oil, it was actually the wife of the marketing director who saw an article he had written and said, "You got to hire this guy." And he was so popular and so effective that in 1928 he made $12,000 a year creating stories. And some of the characters that he had was Motorapsis and Carbuncus, and that was what he used when he was selling motor oil for Esso. Networking. I often say to people, Toastmasters isn't about networking, but every time you meet somebody, it's an opportunity possibly to network. There he was, he had there I saw it on Mulberry Street, his first book in 1937. He had asked 27 publishers to publish the book, turned down by every one of them. He was walking along Madison Avenue on his way home to his apartment. He was going to take that darn book and put it in the incinerator of his apartment, when all of a sudden he met Mike McClintock, a fellow Dartmouth graduate, who just happened that morning to have become the president of Vanguard Press's children's division. Guess what? One hand washes the other. Then there I saw it on Mulberry Street, became Dr. Seuss's first book, and it was because of that happenstance of running into a college roommate. In fact, he was fond of saying, had I been walking on the other side of Madison Avenue, I probably would have become a carpenter. Perseverance, I think that is so important. Networking and perseverance. Be yourself. That's a lesson. Sometimes we try to emulate other people. We see somebody in Toastmasters who's really, really funny, and you're like me, you're not funny, and you try to be funny. Because you have to realize, from happy birthday to you, today you are you, that is truer than true. There's no one alive who's youer than you. And finally, I would say that a lesson that you can learn from Dr. Seuss is nonsense wakes up the brain cells. He said, and it helps develop a sense of humor, which is awfully important in this day and age. Humor has a tremendous place in this sordid world. It is more than just a matter of laughing. If you can see things out of whack, then you can see how things can be in whack. So plan to be more humorous. And 6 months from now, we'll have the humorous speech contest. Even if you don't think you're funny, you should enter it. And then I would give you this last giveaway. The sixth and perhaps the most important lesson I've learned from Dr. Seuss is to be inspired. Be yourself and follow your dreams. There's this tremendous untapped power in each of us. Even if we're a good speaker, we have some really good speakers in this club, you can become great. You can be better your next month than you were tonight. And in his book, Oh, the Places You'll Go, you're off to great places. Today is your day. Your mountain is waiting, so get on your way. Mr. Toastmaster.